In 1974, Tobe Hooper introduced the world to Leatherface, and horror was never the same. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre shocked audiences, sparked controversy, and became one of the most disturbing films ever made, all on a shoestring budget. Decades later, in 2003, Hollywood brought it back, bigger, louder, and more brutal, kicking off the remake craze of the 2000s. But here's the real question. Was this remake actually necessary? Did it improve on the original? Or is this just another horror remake that completely missed the point? What's up, guys? Welcome back to Mike's Movie Room, and in today's video we are looking at, is this a failed remake? Or did it actually improve on the original and make it better? So join me as we dive deep into the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. 2003.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Alrighty guys, before we talk about the remake, we have to go all the way back to 1974, the original. And if you guys don't want to hear the history on the original film, then you can go ahead and skip forward. I will leave a timestamp for when I start talking about the remake. One of the most interesting things about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is how it was actually inspired. Director Tobe Hooper once said the idea came to him while he was Christmas shopping in a crowded store. Surrounded by people, stuck in the chaos, he started thinking, what's the fastest way out of here? And that's when he saw them. Chainsaws. That moment, that feeling of being trapped, overwhelmed, and desperate to escape would go on to shape one of the most disturbing horror films ever made. The film also takes inspiration from Ed Gein, an American murderer and body snatcher from the 1950s. He's also known as the Butcher of Plainfield or the Plainfield Ghoul. He would also create furniture and dishware out of human bones, and he also would create masks and bodysuits made from real human skin. Just like in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre film, Ed Gein was also the inspiration for Norman Bates from Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, as well as Buffalo Bill in The Silence of the Lambs. What makes the Texas Chainsaw Massacre so impressive is how it was actually made. This wasn't a big Hollywood production. It was a low-budget independent film made for around $100,000, and you can feel that rawness in every frame. Director Tobe Hooper didn't have the luxury of big sets, major stars, or studio backing, which is exactly why the film feels so real and so uncomfortable. The cast itself was made up of mostly unknown actors at the time. Gunnar Hansen, who played Leatherface, wasn't some trained Hollywood performer. He was actually a writer and graduate student, and that unpredictability, that lack of polish, is what made his performance so terrifying. He studied the behavior of people with developmental disabilities to shape the movements of Leatherface, giving the character that awkward, almost childlike energy that makes him even more disturbing. And the filming conditions were just as intense as what you see on screen. The movie was shot during brutal Texas heat, with temperatures climbing over 100 degrees. The house had little to no ventilation, no real air conditioning, and the cast and crew were stuck inside for hours at a time. But what made it even worse was the smell. The actors were wearing the same clothes for days, afraid that if they washed them, they'd lose the clothes. On top of that, the production used real animal bones and actual meat for set decoration, which, under that heat, quickly began to rot. So by the time they filmed that dinner scene, the conditions inside that house were almost unbearable. People were physically getting sick. Some were passing out, and that entire sequence stretched into a brutal, non-stop shoot that pushed everyone past their limit. At that point, the exhaustion, the frustration, and the fear weren't just performances anymore. They were all real. And that's a huge part of why the Texas Chainsaw Massacre feels so disturbing. It doesn't feel staged, it feels endured. The entire movie has this raw, almost documentary-like style. It doesn't feel like a typical slasher. There's no flashy kills, no over-the-top gore. Instead, it feels like you're watching something you were never supposed to see. And here's the crazy part. Despite what people remember, this is actually one of the least bloody horror films ever made. Most of the violence is implied, not shown. Your mind fills in the gaps. And somehow, that makes it even worse. There's been a long-standing rumor that Tobe Hooper originally wanted the film to be rated PG, cutting down the violence, avoiding nudity, and keeping everything more suggestive than explicit. But even after multiple edits and submissions, the MPAA still hit it with an X rating at the time. Not because of what you see, but because of what the film feels like. The tone, the atmosphere, the sheer brutality of the idea itself. That alone was enough. Now, years later, writer Kim Hinkle actually cleared this up, saying Tobe Hooper never intended this to be a PG film at all. The goal was always an R rating, and that does make a lot more sense, because everything about this movie feels designed to get under your skin without ever needing to show you everything. It proves something a lot of modern horrors forget. What you don't see can be far more terrifying than what you do see. One of the most disturbing moments in the film, the dinner scene, was shot during a 27-hour non-stop shoot. Everyone was exhausted, delirious, completely pushed past their limits. And the horrible smell and heat that we talked about earlier didn't help. And that energy, you feel it in every second of that scene. And it didn't stop there. Another scene, when Leatherface cuts into his own leg with the chainsaw, the screams you hear are completely real. Gunnar Hansen had a metal plate on his leg, with meat over top, but the friction from the chainsaw heated it up so much, it actually burned him. Even the way the film was shot added to the chaos. Tobe Hooper would intentionally mess with timing, cutting frames just before moments of violence, throwing the audience completely off balance. Your brain expects one rhythm, and he rips it away. Cinematographer Daniel Pearl also used misdirection constantly, drawing your eye to one side of the frame, just before something horrifying appears on the other. And then there's Leatherface himself, a character that doesn't even speak, yet somehow feels more human and more disturbing than most villains. Gunnar Hansen actually developed the character through physical performance alone, with Tobe Hooper guiding him through scenes using gibberish lines, explaining what Leatherface was actually thinking, and forcing Hansen to express it without words.
Where are they? Show me!
And even his masks weren't random. They were his identity. We have the killing mask, the old lady mask when he's cooking, and the pretty woman mask when he's at dinner, each one representing a different personality, a different role he was trying to play. Because according to Hansen, there's nothing underneath the mask. No personality, no identity. Just something trying to become human and failing. And that might be the scariest part of all. The tension on set wasn't just coming from the heat or the conditions. It was coming from the actors themselves. Gunnar Hansen actually didn't get along with Paul A. Partain, who played Franklin. Admittedly, one of the most annoying characters to ever be put on screen. But years later, Hansen realized something surprising. Partain wasn't being difficult. He was just staying in character the entire time. A full method actor, even when the cameras weren't rolling. And after that realization, the two actually became good friends. And then there's the sound design, which might be one of the most underrated parts of the entire film, because instead of using a traditional music score, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre barely uses music at all. What you're hearing instead are harsh, metallic, almost animalistic sounds. And those are actual sounds that cattle hear inside of a slaughterhouse, which is completely disturbing in itself. It's not there to guide you, it's there to make you feel uncomfortable. And speaking of realism, Marilyn Burns, who played Sally, went through absolute hell during filming. In the scenes where she's being chased through the woods, she was actually running through real branches, real terrain. She ended up cutting herself pretty badly, which means a lot of the blood you see on her isn't fake. There's even a moment during the dinner scene where Gunnar Hansen actually cut Marilyn Burns' finger for real, because the fake blood effect just wasn't working. And according to him, at that point, we were all insane. And when you start putting all this together, the exhaustion, the tension, the real injuries, it starts to explain why this movie feels so different. Because it doesn't feel like a performance. It feels like something you weren't supposed to see. Even John Dugan, who played Grandpa, had to go through hours of intense old age makeup. And once it was on, he said he would never go through that process again. So every single scene with him had to be filmed in one continuous stretch, and that stretch lasted over 36 hours straight for the iconic dinner scene. By that point, the conditions on set were already unbearable. And according to Edwin Neal, who played the hitchhiker, filming that scene was the worst experience of his life. And this is someone who had been to Vietnam. So think about that for a second. That level of discomfort, that level of chaos is exactly why this scene feels so real, so unhinged, and so hard to watch. Because by the end, it wasn't a performance. So when the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was finally released on October 11th, 1974, it didn't just shock audiences, it exploded with controversy. Made on a budget of just around $140,000, which is insane when you look at what they pulled off, the film would go on to gross over $30 million worldwide, turning it into one of the most profitable horror films of all time. And yet, despite that success, the people who made it barely saw any of that money. The original distributor, Bryanston Distribution Company, turned out to be a front connected to organized crime, and the film itself was allegedly used to help launder profits from another film. Because of this, the cast and crew were paid next to nothing, around $400 each for their work. So let that sink in. They went through extreme heat, dangerous conditions, real injuries, and walked away with almost nothing. It wasn't until years later, after legal action, that some of them were finally compensated. And then there's the reaction to the film itself. Critics were divided. Some called it disgusting, exploitative, and even immoral, while others recognized something completely different. A raw, groundbreaking piece of horror filmmaking that pushed boundaries further than anything before it, and even inspired other films like Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes. The controversy got so intense that the film was actually banned in multiple countries. And when you look at all of this together, the production, the controversy, the bans, the lack of pay, it almost feels like this movie wasn't supposed to be a success, but somehow it didn't just survive, it became a legend. After the success of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the horror landscape started to change. Soon, slashers were popping up everywhere. Every few years, a new icon was born. Halloween in 1978, Friday the 13th in 1980, and of course, A Nightmare on Elm Street in 1984. But then, in 1986, Tobe Hooper returned, and fans were excited because this was it. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. But instead of giving audiences more of what they got in 1974, Hooper did something completely unexpected. He flipped the tone entirely. What we got was strange, chaotic, a dark comedy filled with extreme gore and over-the-top practical effects. And Leatherface himself, he felt different too. This wasn't the same raw, terrifying presence. This was something louder, weirder, almost a satire. And because of that, the film completely divided fans. Some loved the insane, unhinged direction, including Tom Savini's awesome special effects, while others just wanted the grounded, disturbing tone of the original. Another interesting thing is that when Tobe Hooper realized all the backlash for the tone of the sequel to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, he came out and said that the original was also a dark comedy. And with how crazy and disturbing the first film is, I do get where he's coming from. Maybe I have a fucked up sense of humor, but I laugh almost every single time the cook, or Drayton Sawyer, I'm pretty sure that's his actual name, comes to the house and gets mad about Leatherface cutting open the door, and he's kind of taking charge of everybody and like beating them with a broomstick.
Look what your brother did to that door! You damn fool! You ruined the door!
Just how he's acting over the top, it makes me laugh. Drop a comment down below and let me know if I'm in the minority on that. I mean, for me, I can still have a really good time with part 2. I love watching Tom Savini's special effects, but the movie does get over the top at times, and honestly, I prefer the vibe of the original film. It also sucks that Gunnar Hansen didn't come back. He was actually asked to come back, but they didn't want to pay him the amount he was asking for that he honestly deserved since he got fucked over on the original. So it really sucks that he got replaced. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 was released on August 22nd, 1986. With a budget of around $4.7 million, it only made about $8 million worldwide. So financially, it didn't exactly set the world on fire. But over time, through home video and word of mouth, it found its audience and eventually became a cult classic. After that, the franchise kept going, but the quality started to fall off. We got Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 in 1990, and then The Next Generation in 95. And that one is something else. Oh god, The Next Generation. I mean, if you guys want to see me do full breakdowns on all these movies, like every single sequel, I will. You guys are going to put me through hell rewatching all of them, but I'll do it. So I'm going to be quick with this one. The Next Generation is worth checking out at least one time just to see the crazy performance that Matthew McConaughey puts on. And Renee Zellweger is actually in this movie, and this is either one of her first movies or actually her first. So once they became like big time movie stars, The Next Generation just like plastered their names all over the posters of this movie and shit. And I'm pretty sure Matthew and Renee tried to separate themselves from this movie as much as possible. And after that, the franchise went completely silent. That brings us to the early 2000s, when word started spreading that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was getting a remake, and fans were not happy. This was the first project from Michael Bay's Platinum Dunes, and people were worried. The original film was raw, gritty, and felt almost too real. So the idea of a big-budget, polished Hollywood version, it felt wrong. Even the film's own writer, Scott Kozar, was skeptical at first, until he realized the producers weren't trying to sanitize it, they wanted to make it brutal. Director Marcus Nispel was the same way. He originally thought remaking the film was straight up blasphemy. But everything changed when Daniel Pearl, the cinematographer for the 1974 original, signed on and convinced Marcus to join. And that gave the remake something most people weren't expecting: legitimacy. When it comes to making the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in 2003, the goal wasn't to copy the original. It was to reimagine it for a new generation, while still keeping the same disturbing realism that made the 1974 film so unforgettable. But the way they went about it was completely different. The original film felt raw and almost documentary-like, but the remake leaned into more cinematography and feeling like an actual film. Instead of feeling chaotic and unpredictable, the 2003 version builds a structured, oppressive world. The Hewitt family is no longer just a weird, unexplained group of killers, making them feel more like a twisted, functioning family rather than random insanity. Even Leatherface himself was changed. In the original, he feels almost childlike, confused, reactive. But in the remake, he's more of a physical presence, larger, more aggressive, and far more calculated, but still a little bit in the background compared to some of the other characters. Jessica Biel, who played Erin and is pretty much the new Sally, did a lot of her own physical performance, including running through rough terrain, screaming, and intense stunt-heavy scenes that made her feel like a true survivor rather than just a final girl. And then there's the introduction of Sheriff Hoyt, played by R. Lee Ermey. He might be the scariest part of the entire movie, and a lot of his dialogue was actually improvised. The cast said that they were genuinely uncomfortable filming scenes with him because he would stay in character and constantly push them mentally. That uneasiness you feel watching those scenes, that's real. The remake has this dirty, sun-bleached, almost sickly color palette with heavy shadows and harsh lighting that makes everything feel sweaty, hot, and suffocating. It's cleaner than the original, but somehow feels just as grimy. Even with a bigger budget, they relied heavily on practical effects to keep things grounded. And just like the original, filming was rough. Actors were constantly covered in dirt, sweat, and fake blood, filming in extreme Texas heat to capture that same uncomfortable atmosphere. Some scenes, especially in the Hewitt house, were designed to feel claustrophobic on purpose, with tight spaces and disturbing set design meant to overwhelm both the actors and the audience. And there are some major differences fans notice right away. The opening is expanded, with the van scene becoming much more intense and graphic. The hitchhiker is replaced with a deeply disturbing, how do we say this to be YouTube friendly, unalived sequence. The family dynamic is clearer and more developed. Leatherface gets a more tragic physical backstory, including the skin disease angle, and the tone shifts from subtle horror to full-on brutality. The original leaves you confused, disturbed, and questioning what you just watched. The remake makes sure you feel every second of it. So when the Texas Chainsaw Massacre finally hit theaters on October 17th, 2003, right in the middle of Halloween season, which couldn't have been more perfect, and despite all the skepticism leading up to it, it opened big. The film was made on a budget of around $9.5 million, but went on to make roughly $107 million worldwide. So financially, it was a massive success. But critics and audiences, that's where things get interesting. Critics were pretty divided, but leaning negative. The film currently sits at around 37% on Rotten Tomatoes, with many critics saying it focused too much on style and brutality, and not enough on what made the original so disturbing. Roger Ebert even gave it 0 stars, which is brutal. But fans, that's a completely different story. Audiences gave it a much stronger reaction, with a much higher audience score sitting at around 60% on Rotten Tomatoes. Alright guys, so I know a lot of people like to hate on horror remakes, especially ones that come from Platinum Dunes and Michael Bay, but the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it was their first remake, and they did a fantastic job in my opinion. I mean, this is a prime example on how you can take the source material, respect it, make it better, and not make it a carbon copy like the fucking Psycho remake from 1998. I'm pretty sure that's when that's from, that I might do a breakdown on that as well. And it adds new characters and new lore without disrespecting the original or making it so different that it doesn't even feel like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre film. Child's Play 2019, I'm talking to you. And I've noticed that out of all the horror remakes, this is the one that usually gets the least amount of hate. But it still does get hate from certain people, and I can understand why. This movie 100% has a different tone and vibe to the original. And the best way I found to explain this is that the remake feels like an actual movie. The cinematography is good, the quality is good, and the acting is better. It feels like an actual slasher horror movie, where, like I said before, the original feels like a documentary. It just has this weird, raw, grimy feel throughout the whole movie, and I said this earlier, it feels weird and like something that you shouldn't be watching. And that's really the best way I can describe the difference in tone between these two movies. And I honestly think it's a fantastic remake, and it does improve on the original. But I will say this, it's not better than the original. I'd say these two movies, and I may get a lot of hate down in the comments for this, but I'd say these two movies are neck and neck. Because there's people that I will show the Texas Chainsaw Massacre to, and they'll say that it was a good movie, but it's not one that they really want to go back and revisit because it just feels really grimy and gritty. And when I show them the remake, a lot of people prefer that and will go back and watch it more than the original. There's slasher movies and regular horror movies that people go to and have a good time and can laugh and have fun with. And then there's certain horror movies that are meant to get under your skin and feel uncomfortable and hard to watch. The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is in that category, just like The Exorcist. Exorcist is a great horror movie, one of my favorite horror movies of all time. But just like with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, when I show people that movie, it kind of hits them to their core, and it's not one that they really want to go back and rewatch too often. Get a lot of people down in the comments being like, so what, horror is not meant to be scary or horrifying? It is. It just depends on what type of movie it is. There's horror movies that you can go to the theater and watch and get scared but still laugh and have a good time, walk out of the theater laughing. And then there's other horror movies that actually scare you and unnerve you to your core, and you leave the theater thinking about what you just saw, and it kind of sits with you for a while. Two different types of movies. And honestly, I think Daniel Pearl knew exactly what he was doing. He was the cinematographer on the original one. He wanted this to be his last movie since he worked on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in the beginning of his career. He wanted to make it have its own specific style, and I think he succeeded on that. So everybody that talks shit about this movie being too stylized, too clean looking, and like blaming it on Michael Bay and Platinum Dunes, this was a choice from the original cinematographer of the original movie. And I think he did a great job. And my man, Marcus Nispel, man, dude, he did a great job directing this film, and he did a great job directing the Friday the 13th remake. I got a video on that if you guys want to go check that out, because that's super underrated. And I really think it would have been awesome to see what Marcus could have done with a Nightmare on Elm Street remake. But yeah, guys, I think every single change that they made in this movie worked. I don't think they dropped the ball one time with this movie. Adding more characters into the family and not just kind of carbon copying the original one, I think was a great choice. Leatherface in this movie is big and brutal, and the design of the mask is pretty cool, but I will say the mask from the original film has still not been beat. That actually looks like a fucking mask made out of old, dried human skin. Where in the 2003 version, the mask, it looks really cool. It's my second favorite next to the original, but it definitely looks like it's more special effects made versus something that somebody kind of just put together themselves. But as scary as Leatherface is, and we already talked about him earlier, R. Lee Ermey as Sheriff Hoyt, he steals the show, dude. I mean, he does with every single movie he's in. Go back and look at Full Metal Jacket. Fantastic. But this dude is sinister and funny at the same time with dark humor. And he's probably my favorite addition to the whole movie. But I think the best change that they made was with the hitchhiker. I think almost everybody knew that they could not top what they did with the original movie. I mean, what Edwin Neal did, you can't imitate that shit. Bill Moseley did a good job as Chop Top in Part 2. I mean, that's probably the closest we'll ever get. but it was good that they decided to go a different direction. Now, they still do pick up a hitchhiker, but instead of it being somebody that's part of the family, it's actually a victim that got away. And I will say this, the hitchhiker scene in the original is definitely more disturbing and unnerving, but the hitchhiker scene in the remake is definitely more shocking and like, holy shit. And that's kind of when you realize, okay, this movie is going to be different than the original film. I also think it's really cool how they open and end the movie with real footage of like a police investigation going through the house and looking at the crime scene. I remember when I was a kid, everybody thought this movie was real. Every person I would talk to, they swear that their parents knew somebody that lived in Texas that had a family member that was killed by Leatherface. So, I mean, the marketing was really good, and they leave kind of like hints and Easter eggs in the movie to let you know that this is fake. But a lot of people didn't pick up on that until the internet became the big, huge thing that it is today. So yeah, I honestly love the film, and I know a lot of people hate on the prequel, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning, but I think that's a really fun time too. Yes, Leatherface kind of gets put in the background even more than he does in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. And if you guys can find the uncut version of this movie, it's definitely worth getting and watching because it's actually pretty good. All the new characters come back, and even though it's kind of like nobody really cares about this, it shows how certain characters become the way they are, how Sheriff Hoyt becomes a sheriff, how they become cannibals in the first place because the town's kind of shutting down and the meat factory shut down. And then you see Leatherface get his first human skin mask towards the end of the movie because he was using like animal skin to cover half of his face throughout like the first half of the movie, which was a pretty cool look too. But why I say the uncut version is the practical effects. This has some of the best gory practical effects I've seen other than Fede Alvarez's Evil Dead. So guys, definitely go check that out. And like I said earlier, if you guys want to see me do a whole breakdown on the whole franchise, definitely going to be talking about that movie. So yeah, guys, clearly I love this remake. It really sucks that the good remakes like Friday the 13th, Evil Dead, House of Wax, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and a lot of others kind of get swept under the rug because later on, obviously Michael Bay kind of just saw the money. And instead of spending his time getting like good directors and actually taking time with the films, he rushed out as many remakes as he could, and they started going down the drain. So when people think Platinum Dunes, Michael Bay, they think Nightmare on Elm Street and all those other shitty movies, but there was actually some bangers that came out. Alrighty guys, so do I think this was a failed remake, or do I think it lived up to the original? I 100% think it lived up to the original. I think they're both equally good. It just depends on what mood I'm in. I think the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake definitely has more rewatchability because it's more of a fun movie to watch. But if you just want to watch a grimy, crazy horror movie that gets under your skin, then you got the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I don't think the remake takes anything away from the original. I think it improves on some things. And for people who didn't like the original because it makes them feel too uncomfortable, then the remake is a good go-to because it's actually really good. And that's why I'm giving this movie 4 out of 5 stars. I think it's fantastic and I absolutely love it. Alrighty guys, so those are my thoughts and opinions on the remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 2003. Drop a comment down below and let me know if you agree with my opinions or if you guys want to start a debate. I absolutely love talking to everybody and chatting it up with you guys. I try and reply to every single one of you. It's just getting really hard with how many people are actually commenting. There's so many comments now. I'm trying to get to everybody. I actually just started a membership. It's only 99 cents a month for anybody who wants to help support the channel. It just helps me be able to make more videos like this for you. There's a few different perks you get. Obviously, the first one is priority reply to comments. I'm hoping it gives me a notification to let me know who to reply to first and makes it a little bit easier for me. You also get like custom badges and shit, access to member-only polls, and also access to new videos early. And for anybody who actually does want to join, please make sure you do it on your desktop computer because it will be 99 cents. If you do it on your phone, for some reason, it's like $1.50 or some shit like that. Nobody has to join. It just helps me out to be able to make more videos like this. And like always, I appreciate everybody who supports the channel, no matter how you do it, whether it's just watching my videos, throwing me a like, dropping a comment, or even subscribing. It means a lot, and I'm trying to pump out better quality videos for you guys. And if you guys haven't already and you like content like this and want to see more, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And don't forget to follow me on TikTok and Instagram. I post some different shit on there that I don't post on YouTube. And I also started a Patreon for anybody who wants to join that. And I'm going to be posting stuff on there that's specifically for Patreon, like longer videos that are more rant-filled. And also, every Saturday, I'm going to start doing watch parties. I'm probably going to start a poll every Sunday or Monday on Patreon and have a list of a few different horror movies and let everybody pick what you guys want to come watch with me on Saturday. So I'm going to try and live stream every Friday so I can watch the movie with you guys. I'm going to talk to you guys in real time, and then after the movie, we're going to sit back and chat for a little bit on our thoughts and opinions. So if that sounds fun to you guys, definitely go on over to Patreon. I'm going to start posting stuff there this week. And I'm pretty sure on Patreon, it's like a 7-day free trial too. So if you guys want to join for free for 7 days, you guys don't like what I'm putting out there, go ahead and cancel and talk all the shit you want. And if you guys like what I'm doing after the 7-day free trial and want to stay, I appreciate it so much. I never thought I'd get this many subscribers and supporters to begin with, and it just helps me be able to keep doing this and pumping these out for you guys. But yeah, I'm pumped for that, man. I'm really excited to start watching movies with you guys on Saturdays and talking in real time. And speaking of talking, I've been going on way too long. Until next time, Mike's Movie Room, I'm out of here. Peace.